Marcus was the owner of a gated community. He prided himself on keeping his neighbours safe. They paid a big price to live in the community, but they felt it was worth it. One day Marcus was in his kitchen, drinking a cup of coffee, when he heard something at his door. He assumed it was his neighbour, but was shocked when he saw that it was a person in a mask carrying a gun. He ran into the hall and down towards his safe room, but he couldn't reach it before the man shot him in his leg. He couldn't believe how anyone could breach the gate of the community, don't mind say get into his house. He was worried it was some drug addict who could shoot him to just grab anything to sell for money for their next fix. Marcus pleaded with the person, "Please don't hurt me, just take anything you want and go, please." The person began to speak. "Hello there, Mr. Marcus. Aren't you very good helping people stay safe in this gated community? But then again, you get paid big for it, don't you? Now take me to the room that you even make more money from." Marcus was wondering did he mean what he thought he meant, so he took him around to room after room, but not to the room that he thought he meant. The man pointed the gun at Marcus's head and said, "You have 5 minutes to take me to that room, or I'm going to have my friends burn this community to the ground." Within 3 minutes Marcus opened the door, where valuable paintings lined the wall. The man looked at one painting and found it very realistic, and as he moved closer, he saw a man blink. The man was behind bars. Marcus took a gun from behind a chair and pointed it at the man and said, "So you mint the paintings? I thought you found out about the human trafficking ring I run. Having them all here in this gated community works very well for me. Then I have them put out to wherever the highest price comes from. It's a pretty good business plan." The man froze when Marcus pulled a rope, which dropped a curtain exposing loads of people in cages that were ready to be trafficked. The man said, "Let me go. I won't tell anyone, please." Marcus found it strange when he heard the man giggle. He knew people giggled out of fear, but it didn't really suit this situation. And if he is afraid and begging to be let go, why would he be giggling? Then he saw one of the men in the cages drinking blood from a bottle. He then went from being weak-looking to like a monster. He went around biting everyone in the cage, and they all turned into vampires from the brother of the man in the mask, who was now a vampire. He knew his brother needed vampire blood to escape. It was the only way. Otherwise he would have no impulse to survive or to bite anyone, and if he did, it would be pointless. He smiled as the people that were in cages were now out of their cage and coming straight for Marcus. They didn't attack each other, which he knew would happen. He smiled knowing that soon the gated community will become a community of vampires. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content. Susan was looking through old papers and documents in her family home that was standing for over 300 years. She didn't remember her parents that much because they were killed in a freak accident in their garden. She didn't know the details. She had photos of them, and that is all she remembered. She was reading through different documents when she came to a certain one that grabbed her attention instantly. It read, "I put the treasure in the garden for safekeeping." It was signed by her mom. She noticed the date in the diary entry was exactly the same day her mom had her accident. She wondered, was she murdered for the treasure? This kept bothering Susan more and more. When she was out walking, she kept thinking, were her parents murdered for whatever was buried in her garden? She thought all through the years that her parents were in some sort of freak accident, and now she is worried that it was plain, old-fashioned murder. A week later, she had enough of wondering and just had to go out to the garden to dig up the treasure. There was a page that had the exact position of the garden where it would be. She had a pitchfork and shovel and dug until eventually she hit a hard piece of what she guessed was wood. Sure enough, it was a chest, and when she opened it, she smiled, seeing that it was full of what looked like priceless gold and jewels. She came across photos that made her nearly get sick, as there were photos of her parents and what she guessed were her grandparents, with some sort of spike in her eye. She suddenly heard a noise, and her leg slipped, and she fell on the fork, which gouged right into her eye. She screamed, realizing that the spikes in the fork were what were in her parents' and grandparents' eyes. She fell into the hole and screamed when she saw what looked like a white ghost hovering over her, and within seconds she realized there were bones near her, and seconds later she was buried alive. The spirit was of Mason Jeffers, the estranged son who was cut out of his inheritance over 250 years ago. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Lee was looking forward to go to a new club tonight. It played his favourite music, drum and bass, and he was really looking forward to letting go after a hard week's work. He used to look at dancing to drum and bass as a workout, especially when he stopped taking drugs a year ago. When he got to the club, he was dancing with his friends and really enjoying the thump of the drum and bass in the club. There was a guy outside their group who was dared by his friends to spike Lee's drink. He dropped a tablet with 2022 written on it. His friends told him that it wasn't ecstasy, but a new type of hallucinogenic drug. He had a choice of magic mushrooms, or a tablet with a star on it, or 2022. But since it was the 1st of January 2022, he decided to spike his drink with that pill. After a while, Lee was coming up on the trip, and he felt great. His friends didn't even realize until after an hour it was obvious he was on a very, very bad trip. Suddenly the club became like a dark woods, and his friends were replaced with demons. This was all in Lee's head, of course, but there was no point in his friends saying that. When he was outside the club, instead of it being night, it was like he was in the middle of all colours, floating around, spinning around. He couldn't make sense of it, but it was terrifying him. He was inconsolable. No matter how much his friends tried to talk him down from the trip, they couldn't. They expected the next day he would have a very bad come down. But the real nightmare came when they realized he didn't come out of the trip. A whole week later, it was then he was put into a psych ward for his own safety. When the guy who spiked Lee's drink heard about what happened, he couldn't believe that he was still tripping. And he couldn't believe it that it was true. Whoever took that pill would be on a trip for all of 2022. And to make it worse, Lee was on a very, very bad trip. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content.